This is a quick video on algebra review, and I'll go through the 5 steps that you need to know in order to solve any algebraic equation. So step number 1 is to get rid of fractions, which means basically get rid of any numbers that are in the denominator. So if you have an equation like this, x over 3 plus 4 equals 7, that 3 on the bottom is the problem. So in order to get rid of it, you multiply everything by 3. So 3, just put a 3 beside every term. So 3 cancels 3, we're left with x. 3 times 4 is 12, and 3 times 7 is 21. Okay, so that's how you get rid of fractions. Just multiply everything by the same number. The second thing is brackets. You want to multiply through brackets. So if you had something like 4 times x plus 3 in brackets is negative 28. Then you go 4 times x and 4 times 3. So this would be 4x plus 12 is negative 28. Okay, so be careful of a negative number. So if you had something like b minus 3x minus 2 equals 40. Remember, you take the negative 3 times the x, so you have negative 3x. Then it's negative 3 times negative 2. That would be plus 6. So it would be b minus 3x plus 6 is 40. Okay, so be careful of those negatives out front. You have to take the negative into the brackets. Step number 3 is the transpose. Basically what that means is get all the x's on one side and get all the numbers on the other side. So if you have 3x plus 2 equals 5x minus 7, it means I'm going to get all the x's on one side and all the numbers on the other. So usually I take, if I'm going to have to subtract to get this 3x out of here, and then I subtract from this side. And when I do that, I have a 0 plus 2. 5 minus 3 is 2x minus 7. Now to get rid of the 7, I would add 7 here, add 7 here, and I would be left with 9 is equal to 2x. Basically, the deal is when you take a term to the other side of the equation, if you're adding and subtracting, you just change the sign. So notice up here, the 3x becomes a negative 3x on the other side, and the negative 7 becomes a positive 7 on the other side. Okay, so that's transposing. The next step is to factor. And what this means is to get all the x's gathered together so it only appears once. So for example, if you had an x appearing in 2 different terms that you can't add because they don't have exactly the same coefficients, something like that, we're going to need to factor out the x. So you put the x out front, put the brackets in, and then you have a 3 plus 4y. And now you've got the x by itself. Now you wouldn't go back, you wouldn't multiply through the brackets because then you'd be going around in circles. But that's how you get rid of those 2 different x terms. And then the last thing is to divide. And so, for example, if we just carried on with that one up top, if we had x onto 3 plus 4y equaling 8, I need x by itself. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3 plus 4y. Remember, whatever you do to the left, you have to do to the right. And be careful about the difference between dividing and adding and subtracting. Because this is x times this thing in brackets, we divide. If it was x plus this thing in brackets, then I would subtract. But now this cancels, and this would be x equals 8 divided by 3 plus 4y. And you just would leave it like that. Okay, so let's try one where we have to go through all 5 steps. So here's an example. Let's say we have half ax plus 4 is equal to 3 onto x minus 2. Okay, step 1, get rid of fractions. So that means I'm going to get rid of this 2. So I'm going to multiply everything by 2. So I'm going to put a 2, 2, and a 2. Okay, the half cancels the 2, and I'm left with ax. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 3 is 6. Now, because this is times the thing in brackets, multiplying just by the 3 is enough. You don't multiply twice, like you don't multiply by the x and the minus 2. Okay, that was 1. Step 2 is brackets. Okay, now we've got this x inside the brackets. That's why we have to get rid of the brackets. So we'll get rid of these brackets on the right-hand side here. 6x minus 12. Okay, step 3 is to transpose. So we've got to get all the x's on one side and all the other terms on the other. Now, it doesn't really matter which way around I'll go. I don't like negative numbers, so maybe I'll take the ax to the right and the 12 to the left. So I would have 12 plus 8 is 6x minus ax. So when I transpose, I switch the sign as I bring it across the equal sign. I can get these guys together. We've got 20 is 6x minus ax. Okay, that's 3. And then number 4 is to factor. I've got x appearing twice, so I need to get it just to appear once. So I need to write x times 6 minus a. And to check that you've done it right, just go backwards. Multiply through the brackets. I've got x times 6 minus x times a, so that's good. Okay, and then the last thing is to divide. And so this would be x would be 20 divided by 6 minus a. And that will be the answer. Okay, so those 5 steps are going to work for you for any linear equation. Linear equation means x just appears to 1 power. But there's a couple of other things that you need to know that we're going to need for the course. Powers of 10. We're going to be working in scientific notation. That's another video. But powers of 10, the rules for multiplying 10 squared times 10 cubed, you add the exponents. 2 plus 3 is 5. Because you count as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 powers of 10 there. But if you were having 10 squared and you were cubing that, that's the same as 10 squared times 10 squared times 10 squared. 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 6. So that's 10 to the 6. So when it looks like you've got those brackets and it's cubed, you multiply. If it's just times, you add. Something else that's going to come up a lot is if you're having to divide by 10 to the 6, that's the same as multiplying by 10 to the negative 6. So an exponent becomes negative if it flips up. Similarly, if you had 10, I don't know, to the 4 up here, that's the same as 1 over 10 to the negative 4, but you almost never want to take things down. You're always trying to take things up. When we get to our calculators, just beware that 10 to the 6 is the same as 1 times 10 to the 6. It's not the same as 10 times 10 to the 6, but it's 1 times 10 to the 6. Okay. Beware of when you're taking a square root. So on your calculator, if you had that x squared is equal to 25, and you hit the square root of 25, so if you square root both sides, you're just going to get 5. But beware, it's plus or minus 5, because negative 5 squared is equal to 25, which is equal to 5 squared. So it could be positive or negative. And you always, it's going to be important to us because sometimes we're going to have to pick this negative answer. Now, when you have a cube root, that isn't an issue because it can't be plus or minus. It can only be plus if the answer is plus. So to kill a cube root, you cube root it. What you do to the left, you have to do to the right. And so this up here, this would be x equals. So this is x equals 3. And it's just plus 3. It's not plus or minus. Okay, so that you're going to need to know that. One more thing you're going to need to know, which you probably did in grade 11, and that is solving a quadratic equation. Probably not going to do that a lot in this course, but it might come up a little bit. Quadratic. Quadratic just means you've got an x squared in there. And so, for example, if you had x squared plus 5x plus 4 equals 0, that's a quadratic equation. You can't just square root it because you've got this extra x term here. And so this you're supposed to compare to the general form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. It always has to equal 0 or you can't use this formula. Now this might look familiar. X is negative b plus or minus the root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's the solution to the quadratic equation. So in our case here, a would be 1, b equals 5, and c equals 4. So if you put that into the formula, you get negative 5 plus or minus the root. 5 squared is 25 minus 4 times 1 times 4. All divided by 2 times 1, which is 2. So this is negative 5 plus or minus 25 minus 16 is 9. Square root of 9 is 3 all over 2. This means there's two answers. You pick the positive, negative 5 plus 3 over 2, or negative 5 minus 3 over 2. So this would be x would equal negative 1 or negative 4. And those are the two answers that make that equation work. And you can always go back to the equation and put the numbers in, and you'll see that it works. Remember the factoring that you did in grade 11? X plus 1 times x plus 4 equals 0. That's the same equation. Remember FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. First, outer, inner, last. Well, there we are, right back to our original equation. X squared plus 5x plus 4 equals 0. So we've come full circle here. We've started with this equation. We've used the quadratic to get the solutions. You can write it in this factored form where the two factors equal 0. And straight from there, you can see that if x plus 1 equals 0, then x equals negative 1. Or if x plus 4 equals 0, then x equals negative 4. And so that's why you have two answers here. Okay, so I think that's probably all you need to do your little assignment on algebra.